Once upon a time, in a kingdom far, far away, there was a king and a queen. And they had been living and ruling together for many years in peace and harmony. But they weren't lucky enough to have a child. Not a day went by without them suffering because of this.
It's sad to see how empty our home is, without any children to bring us some joy in our old age.
Yes, how happy we would be if we had ourselves a baby. We would love that child dearly. And so, one day, when the queen was walking and enjoying the view by the river, a frog jumped from the gravel on the shore and told the queen,
Row. I've come to tell you, Your Highness, that your deepest wish will come true. Row. In no longer than a year, you and the king will have a baby girl.
A year went by, and what the frog told the queen came true. The queen gave birth to a precious little girl, and she was so beautiful that the king was beside himself with joy. Because he wanted to share his happiness and celebrate with everyone, His Majesty decided to throw a big party to which he invited all his relatives, friends, and acquaintances. The king also invited the fairies so that they could bless the fate of his little girl. Hear ye, please gather. Everyone in the kingdom is welcome to come to my daughter's celebration. I order that this day be celebrated throughout the entire country. There were 13 fairies living in the kingdom, but because the king only had 12 golden plates that he could use to serve them their food, one of the fairies was not invited to the table at the feast. The party was very beautiful and joyous, and each of the fairies gave the girl the most special of gifts. One wished for her to become wise, another wished that she'd be beautiful, a third that she'd be rich, and so each of them went on to wish her everything that anyone could ever want in life. Suddenly, the 13th fairy came out of nowhere and barged in during the party, seeking revenge for the humiliation of being left out of the feast. She walked in looking at the baby girl and declared with a booming voice,
When the girl turns 15 years old, she will prick her finger on a spindle, and she will sleep forever.
After cursing the little princess, she left the throne room. Everyone froze in terror, not knowing what to do. But the 12th fairy, who hadn't yet made her wish, approached the cradle, and then she said,
I don't have the power to break the curse. However, I can alter it. May the little girl's sleep not last an eternity. Let it only be a deep sleep. For only 100 years.
After the party, the king, who really wanted to protect his beloved little girl from harm, ordered all the spindles in the kingdom to be burned. And after a while, he forgot about the curse. The years went by, the girl grew up, and the spells and wishes that the fairies made for the girl were becoming a reality. She was healthy and very wise, beautiful, well-mannered, and friendly, and anyone who met her liked her straight away. On the exact day when the princess was turning 15 years old, the king and queen had to get out of the castle in the morning and had to leave her home by herself for a little bit. To keep herself entertained, she decided to go find and explore all of the rooms inside the castle one by one. She spent hours exploring the castle until she reached the old tower. She went up the narrow staircase and she stopped in front of a wooden door. There was an old rusty key in the lock of the door, and when she turned the key, the door flung open, and the girl saw an old woman who was spinning a spindle in a tiny little room.
Good morning there, dear madam. What are you doing here?
Asked the princess curiously.
Why, as you can see, I'm spinning.
said the old woman kindly, nodding her head.
Right. But why is that spindle spinning so fast?
Asked the princess, taking the spindle in her hands and trying to spin it as well. But as she touched it, the evil fairy's curse finally came true, and the princess pricked one of her fingers. As soon as she felt the sting, the girl collapsed on the bed in the tower room and fell into a deep sleep. And this state of sleep took hold of the entire castle. The king and queen, who had returned home in the meantime and who were in the throne room, fell immediately asleep together with their entire royal court, which had fallen into slumber at the same time they did. The horses fell asleep in the stable, the dogs in the yard, the pigeons on the roof, and the flies on the walls. Even the fire that was burning brightly in the hearth extinguished its flames completely. Even the wind stopped blowing, and none of the leaves moved in the trees close to the castle. A live fence started growing and wrapping itself around the castle, made up of all kinds of prickly plants and thorns that managed to cover the entire castle and its walls, all the way up to the flag on its roof. The entire kingdom and kingdoms nearby found out about Sleeping Beauty, as everyone started to call the young princess. From time to time, a knight or a prince from other cities would try to make his way through the thick foliage around the castle so that he could get inside. But none of them were able to go through because the plants would twist around them tightly, then stop them from even setting foot in the castle or even end up trapping them. After many, many years, a prince approached the lonely castle. Amazed by the sight in front of him, he started talking to an old man.
Good morning to you, good sir. How are you?
Thank you for asking, Your Highness. I can't complain.
Do you happen to know what's lying behind this very tall fence here?
You don't know? If anyone were to move all these plants out of the way, they would find a castle. And in that castle, for 100 years, there lives a princess who is so beautiful. Like no other princess who has reigned in the kingdom before, my dear king.
Then what happened to make this place look so deserted?
I was but a mere child when my grandfather told me about the princess that is trapped in a deep sleep because of a curse of an evil witch, and that the king and queen, together with their courtiers and all the other creatures there, are asleep as well. Many princes since then have tried their best to reach Sleeping Beauty, but none of them have been successful, and none of them managed to make their way back, getting caught in the thorns of the thicket.
Then the young man said with confidence,
I'm not afraid of anything, and I'm going to rescue Sleeping Beauty and her kingdom, even if it might cost me my life.
And no matter how much the old man tried to convince the prince to change his mind, he wasn't able to convince the young man, who believed that it was his destiny. That was also the exact day when the 100-year curse came to an end, and when Sleeping Beauty was supposed to wake up from her deep and long slumber. When the prince approached the thorny fence, he couldn't believe what his eyes were seeing, because the old thorns and leaves were turning into colorful and beautiful flowers, and they suddenly moved out of his way, forming a path and letting him walk freely inside to the castle. After he walked through it, the path closed behind him, and the flowers turned back into an inaccessible wall of thorny bushes. In the castle's courtyard, he saw many horses and riders who were sleeping on the ground, while the pigeons were fast asleep on the roof. As soon as he entered the castle, he witnessed a similar scene. All the courtiers, together with the king and queen, had fallen into a 100-year slumber. Then he went through several rooms without stopping anywhere. The entire castle was enveloped in such a deep silence that you could even hear your heart beating. But finally, the young man reached the top of the tower and opened the door to the room where Sleeping Beauty lay. She was so beautiful in her sleep that the prince became mesmerized and couldn't take his eyes off her. So he leaned in and kissed her to wake her. As soon as he did that, Sleeping Beauty started moving her eyelashes, opened her eyes, and looked at him fondly. Then, as they both left the tower, the sleeping spell was broken, and the king and queen also woke up from their deep slumber, together with all of the other people and animals sleeping in the castle. Everyone started looking at each other in confusion, not quite believing once they understood what had happened to them.
Your Highnesses, the king and queen, I have come from far away and come to save the girl as beautiful as no other, who couldn't be woken from the deep sleep she was cursed to be in. Finally, now that the curse is broken, with your permission, I want to ask her to be my wife.
We would like to thank you for freeing us from the curse that had taken over us for so many years. We give you both our permission and our blessing to ask our beloved daughter's hand in marriage, but only if she freely agrees to do it. Sleeping Beauty, who was now so happy to have been saved from her deep slumber, decided to marry the beautiful prince. And they had a big wedding party that lasted for a year and a day, and the entire kingdom celebrated, and they all lived happily ever after. My story has come to an end, but this story will continue to go on as long as grass grows and rivers run.
Nu uita să te abonezi la canalul HeyKids pentru mai multe desene animate și povești pentru copii!